Chosen one, there was no announcement when the threshold opened, no dramatic invitation, no public acknowledgement meant to impress you or anyone watching from the outside. Permission at this level never arrives with ceremony. It arrives with recognition. Recognition that you have already been moving according to rules that most never learn exist. What you felt recently was not curiosity being rewarded. It was alignment being acknowledged. The door did not open because you knocked correctly. It opened because you were already standing where only insiders stand. You must understand something clearly from the beginning. The Jesuit inner circle here is not an organization in the ordinary sense. It is an archetype, a symbolic name for those who operate beyond surface identity, beyond public loyalty, beyond emotional reaction. These are people disciplined enough to serve structure without being owned by it. Philosophers of timing, architects of patience, observers who intervene only when history would fracture without intervention. Entry is not about belief. It is about capacity. You were never evaluated by what you said. You were evaluated by how long you could remain coherent without validation. How often you chose restraint over display. How you held power without needing to demonstrate it. That is the first requirement of those above humanity, not superiority, but detachment from impulse. Humanity, in this sense, is not insult. It is the layer of reaction, desire, fear, and self-importance that governs most lives. Rising above it does not mean abandoning compassion. It means mastering yourself before attempting to influence anything else. This is why the process felt invisible. No one approached you with offers. No test was revealed. Every evaluation occurred while you thought nothing was happening. The inner circle does not watch actions alone. It watches consistency under obscurity. Anyone can perform when seen. Very few remain precise when unseen. Your life proved that you could. That proof carried more weight than talent, intelligence, or charisma ever could. At some point, the resistance you felt from structures softened. Not because they surrendered, but because you were no longer a variable they needed to test. Patterns confirmed. Repetition stabilized. Risk dissolved. That is when acceptance occurs, when the question shifts from, should this one be stopped? To, how do we account for this one's presence without disrupting balance? Inclusion is rarely loud. It is logistical. Being allowed to join those above humanity does not grant power. It removes noise. You are not given secrets to feel special. You are entrusted with silence because you have proven you can carry it without distortion. Silence is heavier than information. Information inflates ego. Silence disciplines perception. Only those who can exist without explanation are permitted to shape outcomes indirectly. Notice how nothing externally changed the moment permission was granted. That is intentional. New roles that announce themselves create dependency. Real elevation feels almost underwhelming. Life continues. Decisions feel cleaner. Interference decreases. You realize you are no longer being resisted, yet you are also not being assisted theatrically. You are simply accounted for. That is the mark of passage. This circle does not demand loyalty in words. It recognizes loyalty in posture. How you face uncertainty. How you treat delay. How little you betray alignment when reward is delayed. These traits cannot be taught. They can only be observed over time. And time has already spoken on your behalf. Do not mistake this for arrival. It is access. Access to operate without interference, without confusion, without being pulled downward into performative urgency. From this point forward, your life will no longer feel like it is pushing against gravity. It will feel like gravity has recalibrated around you. There will be no applause, no announcement, no proof for anyone else. That is how you know it is real. Chosen one, what disqualified most candidates from ever reaching this threshold was not lack of intelligence, faith, or discipline. It was desire. Desire to be elevated, to be recognized, to step outside humanity too eagerly. Those above humanity are not obsessed with rising beyond it. They accept humanity fully, then refuse to be ruled by its restless instincts. The final evaluation you passed was not brilliance. It was restraint at the moment when transcendence could have been force. This is why your path felt paradoxical. Every time you could have leveraged influence, you stepped back. Every time you could have accelerated visibility, you chose ambiguity. To the untrained observer, this looked like hesitation. To the inner circle, it was the clearest signal possible. Only those who do not need transcendence are permitted to touch it. Wanting too much is the most common failure point. The system watches carefully for hunger disguised as purpose. The Jesuit inner circle, again, as archetype, not publicity, exists to protect continuity, not greatness. Greatness disrupts. Continuity sustains. They do not search for individuals who want to change the world. They look for individuals who understand that the world changes itself when pressure is applied in microscopic, precise ways. Influence that announces itself invites counterforce. Influence that remains unnamed redirects history silently. You were tested in moments you probably considered personal struggles rather than evaluations. When you were underestimated and did not correct the misjudgment. When opportunities arrived prematurely and you did not grasp. When authority brushed past you without recognition and you remained steady. These moments were more significant than any public achievement. They demonstrated insulation from validation addiction. Above humanity exists a space where validation is considered a contaminant. Understand this clearly. Humanity in this context is not moral failure. It is reactivity. The need to respond immediately. The need to explain oneself. The need to be seen taking action. Those impulses create predictable movement. Predictable movement is controllable. The inner circle does not recruit controllable minds. It accounts for them and moves around them. What cannot be controlled but remains stable is what earns access. There was also a deeper resistance you displayed without knowing it. You resisted identity capture. You did not allow roles, labels, or expectations to freeze you into a static form. Even when others tried to define you, positively or negatively, you remained fluid. That fluidity made you unreadable in the best possible way. Readability is vulnerability at high layers. You must be interpretable without being predictable. That balance is exceptionally rare. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. This explains why your development contained frustration by design. Ease produces attachment. Friction produces discernment. The inner circle monitors who becomes bitter under friction and who becomes clearer. You became quieter, more accurate, more selective. That trajectory is unmistakable. At that point, acceptance is not debated. It is scheduled. Structures adjust. Resistance withdraws. Surveillance becomes background rather than active. You may feel a subtle loss at this stage, not sadness but release. Old ambitions dissolve without replacement. That is normal. When humanity-driven desires fade, They leave space that feels empty until a deeper rhythm fills it. That rhythm is service without ego, action without announcement, and impact without ownership. Those above humanity do not stand higher. They stand still while the world rearranges around them. From here on, your challenge is not advancement. It is containment. Carrying access without craving authority. Carrying clarity without insisting on explanation. Carrying influence without claiming authorship. These are the disciplines that follow acceptance. They are heavier than striving ever was. You were not accepted because you wanted more. You were accepted because you proved you could exist with less. Less noise. Less urgency. Less projection. And in that reduction, something rare emerged. A presence stable enough to be trusted with proximity to long-term outcomes. That is why acceptance finally occurred. Long before you were consciously aware of any transition, structures around you began adapting. Not reacting, adapting. This distinction matters. Reaction implies threat. Adaptation implies acknowledgement. You weren't invited into something new. Something old made room for you. Systems that endure across centuries do not announce their pivot. They recalibrate quietly, updating assumptions without revising language. Your presence triggered that recalibration. What changed first was not access, but weight. Conversations around you carried less resistance. Decisions that once stalled began resolving without explanation. Opposition thinned before reaching you, as if obstacles were rerouted upstream. This was not favor. Favor is visible and temporary. This was accounting. Your existence was integrated into long-range considerations. You were factored in, not catered to. Those above humanity never ask permission from the subject being evaluated. Consent would imply choice. Choice introduces variability. Instead, they observe long enough to determine whether inclusion would destabilize the subject or strengthen them. In your case, inclusion changed nothing about who you were, only how much friction you encountered. That neutrality was decisive. Elevation that alters identity is disqualifying. Elevation that removes distortion is confirmation. You may not have noticed when the scrutiny ended. That too is intentional. Scrutiny ends when it is no longer necessary, not when it is officially concluded. One day you simply realized that nothing was pushing back anymore. No tests. No delays engineered to provoke reaction. No mirrored conflicts. When resistance disappears without reward replacing it, you've crossed a threshold most never know existed. Another subtle change occurred internally. You stopped rehearsing explanations, not out of arrogance, but because explanations ceased being useful. Those who still require explanation are still being assessed. Those whose actions speak without narrative are spared further inquiry. This is not elitism. It is efficiency. Systems allocate attention where uncertainty remains. You removed your own uncertainty by remaining consistent. Understand this. Joining those above humanity does not separate you from others. It separates you from compulsion. Compulsion to react. Compulsion to prove. Compulsion to resolve every misunderstanding. Humanity reacts to tension instinctively. Those above humanity allow tension to resolve itself through time and position. You demonstrated this repeatedly without consciously training for it. There is also a loneliness at this layer that few speak about. Not emotional isolation, but interpretive isolation. Others may sense something has shifted yet cannot name it. You are not above them. You are simply operating on a different rhythm. Trying to explain that rhythm would fracture it. Silence maintains coherence. This is why the inner circle values those who can hold silence without resentment. You should not expect new identifiers, new alliances, or new declarations now. Integration is complete. What follows is maintenance, precision, long-view thinking, the quiet responsibility of knowing when not to move. That discipline is what keeps those above humanity from becoming detached or dangerous. Power without impatience is rare. You proved capable of it before anyone trusted you with proximity. Do not look for signs that something happened. The absence of signals is the sign. When transformation leaves no residue, it means it was structural, not symbolic. You were not changed. You were placed. And placement, when correct, feels almost ordinary. That is how you know it worked. At this level, recognition does not arrive as acknowledgement. It arrives as assumption. You are no longer evaluated to see what you might become. You are treated as if you already are. This shift is subtle yet absolute. Authority stops interacting with you as a subject of possibility and starts treating you as a constant variable. Constants are not questioned. They are worked around. That is what happened here. You may have noticed that certain decisions began occurring without you being consulted, yet always somehow in your favor, or at least in alignment with your path. This is not influence by demand. It is influence by inevitability. Systems that operate beyond humanity's emotional layer rely on inevitability more than force. Force breaks things. Inevitability rearranges them quietly. You were measured not by how much you could change a room, but by how consistently rooms changed without you asking. Those within the inner circle do not call one another by titles that suggest hierarchy. Hierarchy needs reinforcement. What exists instead is positioning. Positioning is silent agreement about who holds which kind of gravity. Your gravity was recognized because it did not fluctuate. Emotional highs did not expand it. Setbacks did not shrink it. Stability at that level is more valuable than brilliance because brilliance fades under pressure. Stability compounds. Blessed by His grace? Click Super Thank You and give $20 to spread His light. Your gift plants seeds that grow His kingdom. Be the blessing. There is also a reason you were never formally introduced. Introductions create traceability. Traceability creates targeting. At layers concerned with long-term continuity, anonymity is not absence. It is protection. You were made unnecessary to locate. What cannot be pointed to cannot be attacked directly. This is why people who matter most in history are often identified only after they are gone, once their removal no longer alters trajectories. Inside highly disciplined structures, there is a fear greater than disruption: distortion. Distortion occurs when influence is misunderstood. You posed the risk of influence without distortion, which paradoxically made you safer to include than to exclude. Exclusion creates opposition. Inclusion diffuses it. But inclusion at this level is never social. It is mathematical. You fit the equation, so the equation adjusted. Internally, you may feel a sharpening rather than an expansion. Less tolerance for distraction. Less patience for narrative drama. More appreciation for silence and clean motion. This is not detachment from humanity, it is mastery of yourself within it. Those above humanity do not abandon compassion, they abandon excess. Excess emotion. Excess explanation. Excess interference. What remains is clarity that does not fluctuate with audience or approval. What you carry now is not power to command, but power to permit. Permit moments to pass without forcing outcome. Permit situations to reveal their own solution. Permit others to misunderstand you without correcting them. These permissions keep structures stable. Most people destabilize systems unintentionally by demanding resolution too soon. You demonstrated the opposite, patience that preserved alignment. This is why you will not feel celebrated. Celebration generates attachment. Attachment compromises accuracy. Accuracy is the currency here. The inner circle recognizes accuracy the way engineers recognize balance, without comment but with reliance. You are relied upon now in ways you will never see directly. History bends in small increments where no spotlight reaches. If you're waiting for proof that you belong, understand this. At this layer, proof would be a downgrade. Being unnamed is evidence. Being untracked is confirmation. Being assumed is acceptance. You have crossed into a space where authority does not ask who you are. It adjusts because you are there. And from here forward, the path does not widen. It simplifies. There is a quiet cost to the position you now occupy, and it has nothing to do with sacrifice in the dramatic sense. The cost is separation without distance. You remain among people, yet you are no longer moved by the same currents. Their urgencies pass through you instead of pulling you. Their fears knock without being answered. This is not emotional coldness. It is structural difference. Those above humanity are not removed from the world. They are no longer synchronized to its panic. You may have noticed that fewer people truly reach you now. Conversations stay on the surface unless you deliberately lower yourself into them. This is not arrogance, it is altitude. At certain heights, sound dissipates unless intention carries it upward. Many mistake this for isolation. It is not. It is filtration. Only what is aligned reaches you. Everything else dissolves before contact. This is how stability is protected over time. What most do not understand is that the inner circle does not offer belonging in the way humanity defines it. There is no shared identity, no emotional bonding, no mutual reassurance. Belonging is replaced with alignment. You are not connected to others through dependency, but through mutual restraint. Each person carries their role without leaning. This prevents collapse when individuals fail or disappear. Structures endure because no one holds them emotionally hostage. This also reframes why your life may feel less dramatic now, even though its implications are far greater. Drama is a signal of unresolved tension. Where placement is correct, drama fades. Events occur, but they do not shake you. Outcomes arrive, but they do not intoxicate you. The nervous system no longer spikes at every turn. That calm is not the absence of challenge, it is containment of capacity. You can hold more without reacting more. Another hidden cost is invisibility without insignificance. Humanity equates being unseen with being unimportant. Above humanity, the opposite is often true. What is too visible becomes distorted by opinion and misused by ambition. What remains partially unseen can operate longer, cleaner, and with fewer enemies. You are not hidden from existence. You are hidden from interference. That is a strategic mercy, not punishment. You may feel moments where you question whether it would be easier to return to the simplicity of being misunderstood loudly rather than being understood silently. It would be easier, but it would not be true. Once you have stabilized at this level, regression always feels like noise, not relief. You cannot unlearn calm. You cannot reattach to urgency without noticing its artificiality. That awareness is irreversible. This position also demands something precise from you: discipline without supervision. No one reminds you who you are supposed to be. No one corrects you publicly. Self-correction becomes your responsibility. Integrity is no longer rewarded externally. It is assumed internally. This is the real initiation few speak about. When no feedback arrives, only alignment tells you whether you are off course. Understand this clearly. You are not standing above humanity because you rejected it. You are standing with it, but no longer inside its compulsions. You still feel. You still care. But you do not drown. The inner circle exists precisely to ensure that those who can remain human without being ruled by humanity carry forward continuity without chaos. This is why crowds cannot follow you here. Crowds move on emotion. This position requires patience, silence, and delayed outcome tolerance. Most people do not want that life. They want certainty now, recognition now, resolution now. You do not. And that is why you were allowed to remain. The cost is not loneliness. The cost is irreversibility. Once you know how still influence feels, noise can no longer convince you it matters. And once you accept that, the world may swirl, but you will not. You are not removed from history. You are holding it steady from a place few ever reach. Eventually, you begin to notice that your movement no longer leaves a trace in the way it once did. Not because you are less present, but because presence has become precise. Above humanity, impact is measured not by disturbance, but by correction. You adjust trajectories so subtly that no one feels redirected. Paths simply make more sense afterward. Crises dissolve before they crystallize. Conflicts lose momentum without confrontation. This is the discipline you are now inside. Most people believe influence requires visibility. That belief keeps them predictable. You have crossed into a layer where visibility is a liability and subtlety is security. The less your actions can be mapped, the longer they remain effective. This is not secrecy for ego. It is restraint for continuity. You are learning to move without casting a shadow large enough to invite resistance. One of the hardest adjustments at this stage is understanding that restraint is now your signal. Earlier in life, effort proved worth. Now, restraint proves readiness. You will often see moments where intervention would be praised, where stepping invisibly would win approval, loyalty, or admiration. And you will feel the internal confirmation to not act. That pause is not hesitation. It is mastery. Above humanity, the strongest move is often letting systems correct themselves within parameters you've already set. This is also where patience stops being passive and becomes active structure. You are no longer waiting for outcomes. You are allowing outcomes to ripen inside timing you trust. That trust is not faith in destiny. It is confidence in alignment. When placement is correct, forcing results only introduces distortion. You have learned how to let inevitability work for you rather than racing it. You may find that fewer situations require explanation, because fewer situations demand justification. Your presence changes equations before debate begins. Others might describe this as luck or timing. Those labels are insufficient, but they are close enough to avoid exposure. Above humanity, misinterpretation is acceptable if it preserves function. You do not need to correct how others explain what works. You only need to ensure it keeps working. There is also a sharpening of internal ethics here. Without external scrutiny, behavior either degrades or refines. You are being asked to refine. Small compromises echo louder at this level. Not because of judgment, but because alignment is sensitive. Think of it as precision engineering. Minor misalignment creates long-term deviation. That awareness makes your choices quieter and cleaner. You do not bargain with integrity anymore. You default to it. Another truth becomes clear. You are no longer preparing to enter something. You are maintaining a position few ever stabilize inside. This requires conservation of energy, discernment in association, and the ability to disengage without resentment. Letting go cleanly is now part of your skill set. You no longer need everyone to understand your direction. Understanding is optional. Coherence is not. Those above humanity do not seek permanence through monument or legacy. They seek durability through adjustment. Their names may fade, but consequences persist. You are now participating in that form of influence, one that survives attention and neglect equally well. Attention does not inflate it. Neglect does not erase it. That neutrality is power refined. If you feel less urgency lately, do not misinterpret it as stagnation. Urgency belongs to uncertainty. You are no longer uncertain about who you are or how you move. What remains is execution without spectacle, follow-through without announcement, completion without applause. These are the markers of someone no longer auditioning for purpose, but carrying it. You are learning how to move without leaving a shadow because shadows attract pursuit. Here, movement is felt more than seen. Impact registers only after it's too late to resist it. This is not concealment. This is efficiency. There is a final understanding that settles in once everything else has aligned, and it does not come as excitement. It comes as clarity. You begin to see that leadership, as humanity defines it, was never your role. Leading from the front creates dependence, reaction, and eventual collapse. What you were prepared for was something older and far more stable: orientation. When you move, direction becomes obvious to others without instruction. When you stay still, chaos loses its grip. That is not charisma. That is placement. Those above humanity are not figures people follow. They are reference points reality organizes itself around. The mistake most people make is trying to be seen shaping the world. The higher function is allowing the world to shape itself correctly in your presence. This is why your path removed urgency from you. Urgency would have pulled you into performance. Performance would have made you visible. Visibility would have shortened your effectiveness. Everything stripped away from you was stripped for this reason. At this stage, you no longer experience life as a series of challenges to overcome. You experience it as pressure to be distributed. Problems arrive, but they thin as they approach. Decisions present themselves already simplified. You do not feel smarter than others. You feel earlier. You see patterns forming before they are obvious. You sense collapse before noise appears. This is not prediction. It is sensitivity created by restraint. You may also begin to recognize why solitude trained you so relentlessly. Crowds dilute signal. Noise blurs timing. You learn to hear yourself clearly because there was no one else to echo against. That silence refined you. Now, even in busy spaces, you carry that stillness. Above humanity is not a place. It is a state where inner signal is never drowned out by external demand. The final test is not power. It is temptation to interfere. You will see moments where stepping forward would solve things faster. And you will understand clearly that speed is not the metric anymore. Sustainability is. You are no longer rewarded for fixing outcomes. You are responsible for not destabilizing trajectories. That responsibility does not announce itself. It simply rests on your discernment. From here on, your life will feel strangely normal to outsiders and quietly exact to you. There will be no grand shift others can point to, no moment they can quote. But within you, something irreversible has happened. You trust alignment more than reaction. You trust timing more than force. You trust silence more than explanation. That trust is what places you beyond humanity's compulsions without separating you from humanity itself. If you ever wonder why this path had to be so precise, remember this: anything that must last cannot depend on attention. It must depend on balance. You were shaped to carry balance without announcing it, to correct without confronting, to move history just enough that it does not tear itself apart. You were never meant to stand above humanity as ruler. You were meant to stand adjacent to it as stabilizer. That is why no crown was given. That is why no title arrived. That is why nothing changed outwardly. Because the work you were prepared for begins exactly where spectacle ends. And now, quietly, without instruction or reinforcement, you are free to continue doing what you were always doing. Holding the line where others would fall into impulse, and letting the world rearrange itself around your stillness.